Alrighty, welcome to I Read This Book with Chris. With me, Chris. Today, we will be discussing The Ultimate Frankenstein. A collection of modern retellings of this Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. I will be discussing it while drinking some cold brew. And if you can't tell, I am not at home. I am at an Airbnb where a guy has a bunch of rocks. Some of these are gemstones. We got some seashells. I also have a chair that's very, very squeaky. Given that it's Halloween time, I thought, hey, let's read some Halloween stuff. Frankenstein, very classic Halloween story. Perfect for Halloween, Frankenstein's a monster. I stumbled across this just a little bit ago, and I thought, Brian Aldiss, I've read a collection of short stories edited by him. Kurt Vonnegut, everyone knows him. And if you look at the back, it has a list of all the people who wrote the stories, most of which I've not heard of. However, there's Philip Jose Farmer, and Aldiss, and Kurt Vonnegut. I guess those are the names that I recognize. How did this story work? I'd like to say I was very disappointed. It appears as if the Frankenstein story is so well known and then was done in film so much that most of the stories were pretty bad. It seemed to go on a couple different themes. Either a modern retelling with different people. Sometimes it was Francine Stein. Sometimes the monster was Frank Stein. All of these different things. So modern retelling. There was several of them that had to do with the legal system. There was a writ of habeas corpus in the state versus Adam Shelley, both of which I could not get through. There were a couple that had to do with Hollywood, and if there was Frankenstein, I'm sure Frankenstein would go to Hollywood because then he could play the role of Frankenstein's monster. And one of them, he ended up joining the WWE. Well, it's a different version of the WWE. He becomes a wrestler. And one of them, Frankenstein, was not the main character. The main character was a lady who was a part-time actress and model, and then part-time grave robber who met this guy who created Frankenstein. I guess he met Frankenstein to create Frankenstein's monster. And then they made him a big movie star, and he won an Oscar. And then afterwards, after he had won the Oscar, everyone wanted a piece of him. And so, because he was made from a bunch of old movie stars, a lot of people, oh no, that hand used to belong to my lover, and yada yada yada, and they literally ripped him apart because everyone wanted a piece of him. Anyway, not a whole lot of great writing. There were a couple of them that I really enjoyed. Fortitude by Kurt Vonnegut. Not surprising that one was really good. It is, I believe it's a movie script. It's not, it's written like a play script, but I don't think it's a play because it talks about what you're able to see, like cut to patient's room, which is full of flowers. It starts off with a close-up of her, and then you realize that she's not her full body. It's a movie script in which Frankenstein becomes the doctor to a billionaire heiress who they manage to keep alive by replacing every part of her body except for her head. And so her head is basically just there with a bunch of tubes sticking out to it, which go to an artificial heart, an artificial kidney, artificial stomach, artificial yada yada yada. I have read this before in one of a Vonnegut collection, and it's quite good. It's a different telling of Frankenstein, and the horror of it comes from the fact that because they control everything, and they control her hormones and all that stuff, they can control her mood. A visiting doctor comes and wants to see what's going on, and they're able to show, hey, we can control her, make her happy, make her sad. And at one point, when she's sad, she wants to kill herself. And so her beautician comes in and slips her a gun, but she's unable to kill herself because she has robotic arms, but Dr. Frankenstein designed it so that she can't actually aim the gun at herself. And there's the horror of that, and it ends with Frankenstein admitting that he has fallen in love with, what's her name, Gloria. He fell in love with her and says, this machine is actually capable of keeping two people alive. And he professes her love, saying, we can live on like this forever, just you and me together. sharing one heart, one stomach, one kidney. What's more beautiful than that? And then the beautician, frustrated, goes and shoots Dr. Frankenstein. And the other doctors there go and save him by hooking him up. So it ends with both of them, two heads attached to this one machine. It's quite disturbing in a funny, grotesque way. Vaudevillian? Is that a word? Almost. So that was a good story that I enjoyed. There was another one. Let's see. Monsters on the Midway by Mike Resnick, which I thought I wasn't going to enjoy, but it's only 5 pages long. Or 7 pages long. And it's a story told by newspaper clippings of the sports section showing Bears, the Chicago Bears, do extremely well because they've replaced all of their linemen with Frankenstein's monsters, with men creatures that are 7 to 8 feet tall, weighing double what everyone else weighs, so they're able to crush their way through the season. There's lawsuits saying, are they even able to go and do it? The NFL changes the rules, but they are able to say, hey, no, you can't go and change the rules to kick us out, so they're able to stay on for the Super Bowl. But they lose in the Super Bowl to the Alaskan Malamutes because the coach, Terry McNabb, realizing that there's no way for him to beat this team that has all these Frankenstein monsters, for all these Frankensteins being the linemen, goes to the doctor who created these creatures and had him put Stephen Hawking's brain inside his head next to his own brain. So him, with his brilliance of being an NFL coach, plus Stephen Hawking and all his genius, are able to figure out a way to defeat and beat the Bears. I thought it was quite good, quite original, especially considering most of the other stories in here. Several of them took a lighthearted stance on Frankenstein and tried to, play it off. But I thought this one, in the way that it had written it, I thought he did a pretty good job, and it was quite enjoyable, especially for someone like me who doesn't really watch sports. Only game I ever watch all year is the Super Bowl. The last story I'd like to talk about from the Ultimate Frankenstein collection is Frankie Baby by Joyce Harrington. It is a story written by a man who marries a woman, Johanna, whose best friend growing up was Francesca Stein, known as Frankie Stein. And his wife and Frankie Stein were best friends growing up. And, life happened. And at one point, they're like, hey, we are going to have a baby. So they go and they have this baby, this little girl, and decide to name it after her childhood friend. They're like, okay. They go and tell the older Francesca that, hey, we had a daughter and we named it after you. And Francesca was like, hey, that's great. I'm going to put a trust fund together for this child to go in when they become 18 to go to school and become a scientist. Okay, sounds good. They're like, kind of the role of like a godmother almost. So at one point, when the daughter is a few years old, I think it's 3 or 4, the older Frankie Stein comes over, sees her goddaughter and says, oh yeah, it's beautiful, enjoys the playing with the child. Being friends with the mother and the father is like, hey, can I take some of your DNA? I'm going to go and do weird sciencey stuff with it. And they're like, oh, we're honored. So she goes, takes their DNA, at which point, a week later, the small child dies. Little Francesca. Parents are heartbroken. The mother is suicidal. Then the father goes and calls Frankie, who is a doctor, saying, hey, I need some help with Johanna. Can you come and help? And she's like, okay, I'll be there in a few days. A few days later, she comes by and brings with her a second little Frankie, second little girl. The mother is like, she was in great grief, sees her daughter alive again, overjoyed, goes, makes her a sandwich, at which point the father's confused, goes and talks. What's going on here, Frankie? What would you do? Why do you have my daughter? And Frankie realizes, and Frankie tells, I came and I perfected your daughter. She will no longer get sick. I took the best traits from you, the best traits from your wife, and then I gave her my intelligence so she'll be a brilliant little girl. At which point the mother comes out saying what happened and says everything was good. I was so happy until I took the new Frankie to the bathroom, and as I helped her at the bathroom I realized she didn't have a belly button. She was just a creation of yours, and the mother had killed the small child, went to go kill the older Frankie, at which point Frankie shoots her. The husband attacks the doctor, Frankenstein. The police are called. The doctor survives. The father survives. Frankenstein admits to killing the original, but there's no evidence, and so she's freed, and her killing of Johanna is let off to be self-defense. And so it ends with the father saying how he wants revenge on Frankenstein. I thought it was quite brilliant. It is said that the men who are great artists because they're unable to procreate. They cannot have and grow a baby, a child in front of them. They cannot create new life. So the way they do that is through art or through their science and their great achievements. That's one of the reasons some people have given to why a lot of the great achievements have been done by men. You can agree with that or disagree with that, but that's thrown out there. And that is sort of one of the themes in the original Frankenstein, is a man tries to create new life. He's not God. He can't do it the way God does it. He's not a woman, so he can't go and get pregnant and give birth. So if he wants to create life, how does he do it? Through his hubris and his intelligence, he's able to take things that used to be alive, bring them together and create new life in a jumbled up, ugly thing that is not natural, that is not human in the exact right sense, right? And that's why his creature is a monstrosity, because he is not able to do it. And yet here we go in this story, and we have a woman scientist, a female scientist, who could have gone and created humans in the normal way, the way everyone has been created. Instead, she's like, I'm going to take the hubris of a man, but in a more refined fashion. They're going to be born out of a machine. They're not going to become alive, fully formed, but we're going to come together as a baby and grow up. It's a gender twisting, but in a way that's interesting and unique, that seems to hold together. A lot of gender changing in modern stories rejects the feminine and masculine nature of the character and just says, what if this person was of the opposite sex? Would that have changed anything? And basically the only difference is now you just change all the pronouns and put a new actor in, and there you go, that's a new story. But this is taking the story and changing it up in quite a strange and unique way that I quite enjoy. If you come across this book, I would definitely recommend reading Frankie Baby by Joyce Harrington. Another one that I didn't talk about was Evil Be My Good by Philip Jose Farmer. I thought that was also quite well done. Here's the bonus book for you, The Man Who Folded Himself by David Gerrold. The Ultimate Time Trip, the best science fiction novel of the year. Mind-bending by Publishers Weekly. So this is a book, time travel. I don't feel like it's the kind of book I should review on YouTube. But if you were a fan of the time travel movie Predestination, Ethan Hawke in it, by the Spearig brothers. It's a 2014 movie. This is a very similar concept. However, in Predestination, there's one timeline. You hop back and forth in it, but nothing can get changed. Just one single solitary timeline. The way it was is the way it always will. The Man Who Folded Himself is the same concept of a man who is his own parents, except instead of there being one timeline, this is the theory of time travel in which there's a bunch of different timelines. And time travel isn't actually going back to your same timeline, but going back in time to another universe, another timeline. It gets quite weird, so if the weird things in Predestination is something you did not enjoy, I would stay away from this. This is a little weirder. It starts off very normal, and it gets pretty weird very quickly. It is, let's see, it has a little dedication. This book is for Larry Niven, a good friend who believes that time travel is impossible. He's probably right. Yeah, bonus book for you. Alrighty, have a good one.